episode of Stay Hot. I'm Blaiden Kirk, joined as always by my two favorite co-hosts of all time, Matthew Sponhour and Theo Ash. And we are looking at our top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL today. We're in that part of the offseason where we're going to start doing some position rankings, maybe some fantasy stuff. Should be a fun episode. But before we get into it, Matt, Theo, how are you guys doing today?
Oh, I'm doing just great. I'm doing just grand. I got a couple people visiting me in Denver in these next couple weeks. My sister is coming to Colorado in 2 weeks. She just booked that flight out, and I haven't seen her outside of the Midwest. We both go to school in different areas of the country, but I've never been out to the East Coast, and she's never seen me here in Colorado. So, I'm excited to hang out with her. And then a friend of ours from Phoenix, good old Gus, comes in after that. So just getting ready for summer, I guess, and have a busy May.
Can't believe you just doxed your friend Gus. That's crazy, bro.
Being from, his name is Gus and he's from Phoenix. I don't think that's
Guys, get him.
quite doxing.
We're also doing a trip here, me and Blaiden and a decent group outside of that here, New Orleans, and probably week and a half. I'm pretty pumped to go. New Orleans is one of the top places I wanted to go, honestly. So I didn't make the decision on where we were going. So when I saw that, I was excited. I've heard great things about it. We've got a really good place.
Scout out some spots. So when we all go for the Super Bowl next year, hopefully we can.
Oh, actually,
very true.
You're cooking. Sophia and I went earlier in the year for my company holiday party, and it was freezing because it's already a really windy city, but then it was like 30 degrees. So it was just unbearably cold all the time, but it's a very pretty city. Like there's a lot of cool architecture and stuff, but yeah, it's. I'm very excited for 90 degrees, 100-degree days. It's gonna be sick.
Yeah, I've been there one time, but I wasn't 21 yet, so my experience will probably be very different than your guys' experience because I couldn't get into any of the jazz clubs or any of the bars or whatever you want to do. But yeah, it was a really cool city. I thought it had authentic personality. Like there's is such a colorful cast of characters around that place, and the music is great, and the architecture, like you said, Blaiden, is gorgeous, and you're on the water. Like, what more could you want?
Nothing.
Well, I actually don't know if you're on the water. Now that I'm thinking back at it, we didn't really see much.
If you're in like French Quarter, then it's like it's on the river.
Yeah, there's water around, but like it's not really a beach city. But still.
So true. And there's the Saint Stadium, which Matt, I know you're super excited to see. And
they're gonna shoot you.
Oh man. Yeah. No, I'll probably just avoid that, or if I go there, maybe like spit on it or something.
Oh, now you're really not safe.
But you guys want to get into some quarterback rankings?
I want to talk about. Wait. Before we do it, I want to talk about the NBA games that I watched.
Okay.
People actually have been really mad that we have not talked about the NBA playoffs.
I've seen it. I've seen the feedback. So I just want to say, Minnesota Timberwolves had the best defensive performance I have ever seen in my life, easily. And I have not watched enough basketball that I've seen like the second best defensive game of the past 5 years or whatever. that probably came and went without my eyes seeing it, but. I think from the feedback that I saw on Twitter and I can't even imagine like a more successful defensive game than that. Like, what would that even look like?
I mean, especially in this era with how good the offenses are, if you adjust for that, I mean, I'm not going to hate you for that take. The way that they cut off passing lanes and rotate and match up strength wise with the Nuggets is ridiculous. If there was a second place, it'd probably be one of those Bucks playoff games in 2021, if I had to guess. If we're not like talking about like just a random regular season game, which we're not. I think Minnesota's got a real chance to do some damage I don't know if there's any team where you're like, yeah, but they can't get past them. I mean, I guess they haven't finished off the Nuggets yet, but I'd be pretty worried. I mean, Jamal Murray is playing terribly, and Jokic is just not as aggressive as he needs to be. Granted, it's very, very hard. They're just not as locked in, and they don't really have anybody to throw on Ant. They don't really have an answer for him. I think that some of the teams going forward could do a little bit better. I think that the Thunder have a little bit better personnel to maybe deal with that. Obviously,
I definitely agree.
And then I think Boston would be a very big challenge for the Timberwolves because, I mean, with Drew and Derek White, I mean, they've got size, they've got good defenders, and they can go 5 out all the time. We'd have to see how it goes, but.
Well, Boston has to get past Cleveland first. So.
They get to get past Cleveland first.
Yeah, man.
They have the luxury of playing them. But, yeah, I mean, I think what the last game revealed is Minnesota's terrible secret, or great secret, I guess, which I never would have guessed. And that is you can take Rudy Gobert away and they look like that. And my guess is you could take Ant away and they could still be like, okay, which is a really, really scary thought. Like he adds, I mean, he's a great defender and adds so much offense as a closer. But I mean, he was quiet for a lot of that Nuggets game, especially in the first half. And they were still just completely locked down. Like, I don't think they would win anything without Gobert and Ant. But the fact that you could kind of see you could take those two away. And I think that just this effort and this length and this tenacity would make the role players. I mean, it feels like those Grizzlies. It would feel like those Grizzlies teams without Ja. I think, where it's like, how are just this collection of role players won 21 games this year? But you're adding, obviously, going forward, you're adding that kind of star power to it. Man, I just think this is such a much more complete team than I thought going into it.
I think they'd be a disaster without Ant, to be completely honest with you.
You think so? You think so?
Yeah.
They would never, the role players couldn't do it?
Well, a lot of this has been Karl Anthony Towns has done a really good job this run, picking his spots and being really efficient with it. You make him the number one guy, I mean, it's going to get uglier. It's going to get a lot less efficient. We've seen it before. He's not a number one like that. He's a great player, but he's not a number one like that. Conley, it's another guy where it's he picks his spots. And even then, Minnesota's offense hasn't been necessarily super consistent without Anthony Edwards during this run, and that's against two defenses that are not that great. I see what you're saying. They've been really good. I think that them being great defensively without Rudy Gobert just doesn't even make any sense.
I don't understand. That just blew my mind. I was like, if you could do this without Gobert, well, holy shit. That's great. That is just crazy. But yeah, I mean, you probably know more than me. I probably should have phrased that take a little differently. Just the role players are awesome, really, every single one of them.
And kind of the same way as the Grizzlies. Yeah, they probably could be a lot better than you'd expect. But I think the Grizzlies have a little bit more offensive firepower outside of Ja, whereas with the Timberwolves, it gets pretty, I don't want to say totally bleak because Cat's been so good and McDaniels has done some stuff and Conley has done some stuff, but you shift all those guys up one spot in the rotation, and it's
right. I see what you're saying. Oh well,
the other big game. I mean, well, Knicks Pacers I thought was super good, but it was kind of as expected. Brunson did his thing. Halliburton just needs to be more decisive. The hamstring stuff really has you worried. Celtics Cavs I don't think is the most interesting series in the world. I'm not going to lie to you. I think the Celtics are a little bit underrated right now. Probably. I mean, well, maybe they're not underrated. Maybe it's just
maybe under talked about just because
here's the thing, not even under talked about because it's yeah, because it's such an easy series. It's of course man, you're not going to get talked about.
Come on, man.
I'm going to keep it honest, bro.
What did they lose by in game one? 22? I didn't watch it.
When the Cavs end up winning this series, they'll be talking about the Celtics. Don't you worry.
And then you wake up.
That would be one of the most shocking, straight up healthy or mildly healthy upsets ever. I really do think so. If this Cavs team, it's bizarre what's happened with no Jared Allen. So yeah, they wouldn't even be healthy. No Jared Allen and Garland. Who knows what happened? It would just have to be a Donovan Mitchell like 60-point game every night. I thought
Could
Thunder,
happen, honestly.
I thought Thunder Mavs was super interesting. I mean, the Mavericks' defensive problems starting to show themselves, even though, I mean, obviously the additions that they made at the deadline have been a huge deal. Gafford was super, super valuable. But really what's killing him is Luka. Luka is just not himself this playoff run. And I'm still under the impression, everybody gets one or whatever. I'm not going to rag on him too much because he's been so consistently good and he's a little banged up. So my thought process is he's proven it. And even if this isn't his greatest run ever, maybe he'll be back next time. But it's not good in the meantime. And the Thunder are just so good already. I thought people got way too low on them because they were young. And I think that's totally ridiculous. People are mad at him for being young. And I get it. Like, there are some flaws with the team because of the youth. Like, Josh Giddey's starting. Come on. Chet and J-Dub are not, like, who they're going to be in their final form for sure. So their ceiling is still, like, maybe a little ways away from them. But being youthful is a good thing. If anything, there's too many teams that are old. And, this is a youthful team that was the number 1 seed. I'm not shocked at all to see them go out and crush it so far. They swept round 1. They haven't lost yet. I don't know if they're going to be able to go win the finals because I think they're still giving some minutes to some guys that are really questionable, like Giddey and like Gordon Hayward. They lack some size.
I was listening to it on the radio and laughed when they announced Gordon Hayward checking into the game. It's like, to be completely... did not remember that.
We fleeced them so bad, bro. We fooled Presti. I can't believe how rough he's been. Under 50 baskets for him since the deadline. It's ridiculous, man.
Sounds about right.
I thought it was such a strong addition, and it probably would have been like 2 years ago. But why? I think they're going to be so good in a couple of years. There's no reason they shouldn't be aggressive this offseason. Hopefully, Presti knows to just build this thing out and hit the button now and not wait for it. But
yeah, I love it. I think you get a team this young and this positionless and just this kind of quirk. Like, I just love watching them. I think they're so weird. Like, Chet is kind of a unique player. He's a unique player. Like, it really is so versatile. And it's like, who's the 5 right now? They had a lineup last night that was so small. Like, Gordon was at like the 4 when he was in. I don't know. It was crazy. I just think that they are tough to solve because of just how weird they are. They got the coach of the year. I see why. Just watching a little bit of them, and the Mavericks couldn't really figure them out. They couldn't defend without fouling. Some would say the refs were out to get them. They got killed on the offensive glass. And the Thunder aren't even that good at that. So definitely looks like the Thunder will take this series, which would have been my prediction. But I think Thunder Timberwolves would be my ideal Western Conference because both of those teams just seem like the hottest right now. But I don't know.
I can't disagree with it.
Well, let's talk about some quarterbacks. I will say, we should probably just start at number 1 and go down to 10 just because, let's be real. Number 1 is Patrick Mahomes. I don't think, I'll explain the way that we did this. We each sent in a list and we just put in a spreadsheet and did like the ranked choice to the like board account computation for a consensus ranking. So then it's like ranked in order by the score, and it gives the consensus ranking for stay hot, right? And obviously we all had Mahomes at 1. So Mahomes is number 1, and so do we need to talk about it? Like, is it?
Well, yes, we'll talk about it a little bit. Just I think the thing with Mahomes is it just doesn't matter who you have around him, right? At this point, that any wide receiver, Rashee Rice, who knows how long he'll be suspended, I'm just not worried. They have the formula, like just post snap, they've gotten to the point where they don't need a coach to even call the plays. I feel like just snap it. And Mahomes seriously has the sixth sense and contact balance to just stay up as long as he wants at this point. Like, he never, ever, ever gets sacked. That's the main thing. And just when you are avoiding those negative plays, it's such a strong rate, and you're just so slippery. No one else is matching it. No one else has the answers that they do, because they have him, and that's why they won the Super Bowl. Figure I'll say something about it.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I don't think there's much to say that everybody doesn't already know. But his level of arm talent, his ability to avoid sacks, and how much he's able to cook, outside of the pocket when he's creating, makes him the best there is.
Yeah, I think about that play he had versus the Ravens, and he didn't even have like the craziest game versus the Ravens, and this didn't even end up as a positive gain. He still got sacked here, but I remember Matabike getting him and like twisting him down on the ground. And do you remember how he contorted himself and like didn't go down on that first?
And there's really
and, like, it's like no one else would have stayed up there, like
ever. Like, there's no one who does it quite like him.
Yeah, and he still got sacked because Clowney came and cleaned it up. But it's like, dude, that is a top defensive player, just smoked him, and still it's like he almost escaped, and there's just no one who escapes or almost escapes and pulls off what he can pull off. And yeah,
he's the best. He's we'll say it every single year until he proves otherwise. He's the best. I don't know what else there is to
and think about that money drive in the Super Bowl, like coming back again, down 10,
Yeah,
like it just doesn't matter. And that last drive to bring it to overtime when there just wasn't that much time on the clock was very Brady-esque. Like, there wasn't a lot of running around and throwing it down the field. It's just like made the smart play each and every time, and that's all he does now is make the right play. So yeah, he's
especially in those big moments. And they're like, we look at times last year where we're like, I don't know if they can win the Super Bowl again. The receiving core just doesn't seem up to par, and it just didn't matter when it got to the playoffs, because Mahomes was just that good.
I wouldn't necessarily go that far, but I mean, it mattered. They won a bunch of defensive games too. I mean,
yeah, the defense was really good.
Mahomes being able to get it done at all with that receiving core is wildly impressive, and we know why he's the top guy. But their receivers being bad certainly affected them.
Yeah, I agree. To some extent, but it didn't prevent them. But anyway, let's move on to number 2.
All right. So now we get into actual discussion talk. A lot of people say, well, as long as you have these 5 guys in your top 5, you're okay. Our consensus number 2 guy was Josh Allen.
So we all went with him.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of the same stuff where even when, there was some limitations to Stephon Diggs, he was balling out pretty crazy. I think a lot of people who are low on him because he has like the occasional really bad stinker. And that's, fair. It's a serious knock. But if he didn't, then it would be Mahomes-esque for him.
Right.
Even with the bozo gene, just the tools that he's working with and the throws that he's able to hit are right up there with literally anybody else. And honestly, it's not as big of a deal that he does the occasional over-aggressive throw when you're creating as much offense as he does.
Yeah, he's also 7th all time in playoff passer rating. Like, outside of Mahomes, like the guy who's had probably the most success, honestly, in the playoffs is Josh Allen, even though he's never really been able to get past the Chiefs. Some of his games, he had one against the Patriots a few years back that was pretty much perfect.
That game might be carrying the stats a little bit.
Yeah,
he did throw for like,
but then the next game he went out.
He was like the 13. Was that the 13-second game where it was the back and forth, like toe for toe with Mahomes type game? And yeah, I mean, he's been in a bunch of playoff games at this point and still holding steady in that top 10 all time type range. And you look at a lot of the other top guys on this list, Lamar, Dak Prescott, these guys, Justin Herbert is probably going to be on this list somewhere. They don't have the same playoff success that Josh Allen has. So, it's Mahomes, and then who else? Purdy, like he's been farther.
Aaron Rodgers, man. I mean, he's got a ring,
right.
and we've got to start respecting the ring. So he's got to be like, there aren't a bunch of title winning quarterbacks who are worthy of the number 2 spot because Mahomes keeps winning them all.
True. It's definitely Rodgers at number 2 for current quarterbacks with the most playoff success, and then Stafford probably as well, who's actually
Stafford's
4th all time in playoff passer rating. But
how about that?
Josh Allen is at the peak of his powers, and Stafford's honestly pretty close to me. But we'll talk about that later.
I love Stafford, but yeah, the thing that really stood out for Allen for me last year is like the defense was literally surviving by threads, and Diggs was not himself, and they had to get a new offensive coordinator. Like, you want to talk about powers against a quarterback? Allen had as much going against him as anyone last year. For him to be as successful as he was, I thought, we talk about how impressive Mahomes was with the lack of receiving talent. I thought Allen was really impressive given all that was against him.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't perfect last year. I'll say, like, his situation compared to like Trevor Lawrence, for example, I think is way better. But you're right. And they probably didn't Lawrence need to fire Ken Dorsey, I would say. But
it was definitely a hectic situation for Buffalo.
It was, and I think part of that was them overreacting to their own turnovers. Like, I just think it's kind of something you live with Josh Allen, because at the time that happened, the offense was still top 5, and by the end of it, Buffalo ends up 3rd in EPA per play. They end up 2nd in success rate, right? Like, they're just a great offense year in and year out, and they win the division again. And I think Josh Allen is the catalyst for all of it. I think that Gabe Davis is, not that great, but he produces on that team and scores 4 touchdowns in the playoffs because he's playing with Josh Allen. And as long as you're just in that offense, you've got a real chance to reach your full potential when you're playing with him. He scores more rushing touchdowns than just about anybody else. Scored a shit ton of passing touchdowns this year. Like, he is their offense. He's their whole thing. And
I do maintain the belief that they probably overreacted to the turnovers because their head coach is a defensive guy. And so he's like, dog, my defense is already hurt. Give me some help. Like, don't keep me off the field at the very least. But the analytics would clearly disagree with them. But yeah, we have Allen at 2 consensusly. I'm pretty sure the entire top 5 we are in complete agreement on. At number 3, we have Lamar Jackson.
Let's pat ourselves on the back. What a great top 3.
Yeah, I mean, Lamar is coming off an MVP year. I know he had a tough end of the season, but that was kind of a weird game against a very good defense. There are times when I feel like he's gotten too far away from his ability as a rusher. I mean, I know you want to preserve yourself, and that's always a balance, but I do wish he'd attack a little bit more. But even that being said, he's still the biggest rushing threat in the NFL, I think. Outside of maybe like a Justin Fields a couple of years ago who really went off, or we'll see what Anthony Richardson can do. It kind of just depends on which one of those guys wants to be the most aggressive or who plays the most games. Lamar has developed so much as a passer. Not necessarily saying he was bad to start, but he's at even another level than he was in like 2019 when he won the MVP. He uses his rushing to create stuff that's not there and hit lanes and make the defense account for it, and then take advantage of when the defense does have to take account for it. There's other dudes who maybe have a little bit more arm talent that are below him, like Justin Herbert, for example. But Lamar makes up for it with his creativity. And we've seen what the offense looks like with and without him. And this isn't even talking about just in the rushing game itself, how the Ravens are always somehow like the most efficient rushing team, not even with just Lamar, but the backs as well. That's because they got an extra guy to account for. And that doesn't show up on the stat sheet as much as, throwing it a bunch more. And Lamar is always a little bit underrated because he just doesn't throw it as much as a lot of other guys. So his passing stats are not quite as high. And you'll look at a game and he only has like 19 throws or 25 throws, and he doesn't put up the big yards numbers. But he's still right up there.
Yeah,
and he's not doing it with a super strong supporting cast either.
No, he's really not. The offensive line this year was just okay. I think both of the tackle spots were pretty replacement level, and his wide receiver one for most of the season was a rookie, Zay Flowers. Like, Mark Andrews was hurt, yet he was the best intermediate passing threat in the league. He led all quarterbacks in designed runs and yards on designed runs. He was second in EPA when trailing. I mean, the guy he never had a real stinker until maybe the Chiefs game. But again, that was a really, really great defense that he played. And
they probably still would have won if Zay Flowers didn't fumble
at the one, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't all on Lamar, that L. But man, like, he's just gotten so advanced. I think that he's very kind of Stafford-esque, I think, with his arm talent, like the frequency at kind of which he changes his arm slot and is able to kind of bend it around people in front of him. And he's got high-end arm talent, like maybe not quite as much as Herbert, but it's pretty high-end still. It's pretty great. And just overall, I don't know if there's anybody as well-rounded as he is. I think the only thing that puts Mahomes and Josh Allen above him is they've been a little bit more consistent over the past couple of years. But I think Lamar was a deserving MVP last year. I think he was the best weapon in all of football. So,
yeah, that 49ers game always sticks out to me of just being a total masterclass performance from a quarterback. It might be the best performance of any player all last year.
Well, he had a better game than that. He had the Dolphins game. And
yeah, that's true.
I
don't know. The Niners game was more impressive to me because of how good their defense is.
That's fair.
Like the play he had where he was able to burn the Fred Warner's angle. I'm dog. I'm like, who does, like, he is the only player in the league I feel like that can set up Fred Warner like that. And I
saw Greg Dortch do it.
Greg Dortch. When we do our receivers pool.
Well, yeah, keep that in mind when we're ranking receivers. I saw Greg Dortch do it. Here are the 3 EPA per dropback leaders of the next gen stats era. Best 3 games in EPA per attempt since 2016. Number 1, Lamar Jackson. Number 2, Lamar Jackson. Number 3, Lamar Jackson.
Oh my God. Does it say, is it for season or for like a game?
For a game.
What games are they?
Week 1, 2019. Week 10, 2019. Week 17, 2023. I think 2 of those games were against the Dolphins.
I'm gonna say, I'm like, was that Dolphins, and
I don't know what the Week 10 game of 2019 was. But
let me look these up.
So 3 of the most efficient passing games of the last 8 years or 7 years is Lamar Jackson.
Lamar Jackson. That is pretty ridiculous. Week 1,
bad.
2019, I know is the Dolphins. Week 10 is.
You get 2 seconds.
It's okay. It's all right.
No, I promise. I got it. Week 10 is.
Just make up a team, man. He cooked Washington,
it's
man.
Bengals. It's Bengals. That makes sense too, because that's the spin move game. And then,
right.
Yeah, and then week 7. Game. You said week 17.
That was I think that's the Dolphins game.
What team did he play week 16 though?
Who's number 4 on the list?
Number 4 is Herbert. I'm surprised, Theo, you didn't put him higher.
It's just so hard to put him over those top 3. I think.
Because they're all winners.
They're all winners, and Herbert. That's where the not his fault threshold ends where it's like I can put him ahead of everybody but those three.
When you get past the whole pitiful excuses and tears from the Herbert group, he still is a pretty solid quarterback.
He's all right.
He can hit, every throw, and he's very aggressive. He's been in some limiting offenses, and he's had some limiting receivers. And even then, you can still see it with him. It's going to be a little bit of a process. Saying he's the fourth best quarterback right now, it's not going to be good. Next year, he's not going to put up like the fourth best EPA per play of anybody with the offense that he's in. But it doesn't mean that he's not right up there. Like we said, he's got just about as good an arm talent as anybody. He can really move. He doesn't as much as maybe some of the other guys, and he doesn't really like to use his power, but he does have it in his bag when he gets the chance. But he reads things out so quickly. He can get the ball out really well, and he can hit any throw. He loves attacking over the middle. He loves, hitting hole shots other guys maybe can't.
He might have the best hole shot in the league. He might.
He very well might. And you saw what the team did without him. Like, he got hurt, and then they lose like 63-7 to the Raiders or whatever it was. I think there's a lot to be said about his consistency since he was a rookie. Like, he came in and was fantastic. And then it's a 5,000 passing yard season, 38 touchdowns, 4,700 yards, 25 touchdowns. Like, it's pretty ridiculous. Like, every year the QBR is above 60. That's ESPN's QBR, not passer rating. He's been great. Like, I know that he's had some pick sixes in the fourth quarter, but that's about like all you can point to with him in terms of flaws. Is like sometimes in these big games, he hasn't been able to pull through. But man, like, for every one of those, there's a game-winning drive that he has. Like, he has 14 in 4 years. He's got just about as many as anybody.
Those 14 game-winning drives doesn't count the times where he's executed a game-winning drive but left 3 seconds on the clock and they lost.
Right, or something like that. Like, he's led a bunch of game-winning drives and he's been clutch and whatever. But
he couldn't inspire his defense. All I'm saying, he played safety in high school. I don't know why he's not out there.
Put him out there, man. Maybe he can slide the corner. They need him.
Yeah, there's just not much to say in terms of flaws. He protects the football. He doesn't take sacks. He can hit any throw. He's pretty.
He's
perfect.
not the high level creator that the guys ahead of him are.
Yeah,
like, he is a very high level creator, but he's not Mahomes or Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson. That's basically the knock on him. But I'm sure there could be a world where if he was on a really stacked offense, granted the guys ahead of him aren't, but if he was on a really stacked offense, maybe consensus would be that he's like a 3 or a 2, probably not ever better than Mahomes. But he's pretty elite and about as flawless as you can get.
He's going to have the Dan Marino arc, I fear.
I was looking at the amount of I don't think people quite appreciate how bad his situation is too. Like, Quentin Johnston sucks, everybody knows it. Like, oh, he's terrible. But all the time you hear, oh, he has Keenan, oh, he has Mike Williams, and the answer is sometimes he does. Like, for a lot of games these past couple of years, he hasn't. And I was taking a look at some pressure numbers over the last 2 years. Justin Herbert has had 224 quick pressures allowed in front of him, where like guys are just right on him and there's no chance.
Not motivating the offensive line either.
Not motivating the offensive line. That's more than even Trevor Lawrence. And we know how bad the Jaguars' offensive line is. That's like 70 more than Dak Prescott over that time. That's 124 more than Brock Purdy. Although, to be fair, he's dropped back plenty more. But still, like, I can't imagine there's more quarterbacks who've faced more unblocked pressure or whatever, or brutal drops, or horrible defensive efforts. Like, no aspect of the Chargers has been strong around him until hopefully this season, and hopefully Harbaugh can get things turned around. Like, at least you're hoping the offensive line is good this year and they have something to lean on. I'll never forget when they took that lead in Jacksonville. And they were up like 27 and they had -3 rushing yards like the rest of the way or something like that. Like, just terrible, like, incompetent stuff happening around him in LA. And through it all, I think he's been extremely, extremely elite.
He has been, but that game was on him, you know?
It was.
It was. That game was like
He's the quarterback.
A very C- or C Justin Herbert game where it was average.
There's some guys who can get away with the C- performance. Like the idea that no quarterback ever has games like that is just so ridiculous. Like even Mahomes, I've seen it before too. We've seen Mahomes go and have stinkers. There was a weird part a couple of years ago where he was just like throwing the ball into the dirt sometimes, and it was super bizarre. That type of stuff happens. No quarterback is perfect. And I think when we talk about them, sometimes the guys on the better team who just like don't lose because of it, we act like it didn't ever happen. And then the guys who are on the really terrible teams, if it's not an A+ performance, then they lose. So we really, rag on them for their Bs or whatever,
Yeah, I definitely obviously agree. Like the playoff performance stuff, obviously it matters to some extent. You need to look good in the playoffs eventually, but bad playoff performances get so overrated, right? Like Lamar, you'd think that he has never had a decent moment in the playoffs before. Like, and some of it is they did so good in the regular season that they got to skip the easiest matchup. They got to skip the first round, so he couldn't play like a Patriots in the first round when Josh Allen puts up 7 touchdowns, right? He just skips right to the next round. Or like this year, he plays very well against the Texans, has one of the best success rates of the season against them. And then the next round he plays a good defense, has a very C- type of game where like it's not great, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, you're completely useless even though you got to skip the first round, played great in the second round, and then it's like ran into a great defense that gave a lot of people problems, and you're back to square one. You may as well not have accomplished anything this season. So that's obviously a Lamar thing, but it goes for all of these quarterbacks because there's a lot in the top 10 that have these problems. But
like we said, the only guy who actually wins is Mahomes. So if that's your baseline, I have horrible news for you. When it comes to your feet, eBay's got your back, because with eBay's authenticity guarantee, real experts are checking your sneakers, every stitch down to the sole. Me personally, I'm a big fan of a classic Air Force, or maybe a nice suede or leather boot, but whatever it is that you're adding to the lineup next, head to eBay. From the drop to your doorstep, eBay does not play with your sneaker game. Just look for that blue check mark. So ensure your next purchase is the real deal. Visit ebay.com for terms. Hey there, folks. Ever had a frustrating ticket buying experience, especially when trying to catch an MLB game? Well, I know I sure have. Last minute tickets, seats, deals. It's like a wild goose chase, but fear not, because I have found a solution that is a total game changer. Introducing Game Time, the authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball. Prices on the app actually drop as the first pitch nears, with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and views from your seat. It really is the stress-free way to snag MLB tickets. Now, I've been browsing through the app, and let me tell you, it is a gold mine with upcoming MLB games, high-profile events, and deals that'll make your wallet smile. Game Time truly has it all. Plus, features like panoramic seat views before purchase, mind-blowing. But wait, there is more. Priority on last-minute deals, flash deals, zone deals, and all-in pricing. Game Time has your back, and with their lowest price guarantee and flexible customer service policy, it's peace of mind all the way. So don't miss out. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code BLADENK for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, so don't forget to redeem your code. Download now for last-minute tickets and the lowest prices guaranteed. But number 5, we have Joe Burrow. Snow Burrow.
Joe Shiesty.
Yeah, man.
Burrow is the last guy on this list, considering he's the only one of them to make a Super Bowl outside of Mahomes in the top 5. Might feel a little offensive to some people. I know last year when we did it, it was, but I don't think that it is. Burrow is a great player. He can read things out super quickly. When he wants to, he can get the ball out quickly. and he's a great creator. He really loves to extend plays. I think the one thing that makes him a little bit lower on this list, though, is that he kind of takes a lot of sacks, and he's gotten a pass for that because the offensive line has not been that great around him. And that's a fair point to make. But he also holds the ball into sacks at times. And I think that's what puts him at the bottom of tier 2 for me. He's still great. He's still amazing. But I sometimes wonder if he didn't have the great receivers that he did and he was holding the ball like this, if maybe it would really compound on itself.
Yeah, I think
not to be negative about the 5th best quarterback.
Yeah, no, yeah. I think that he's top 5 for sure. I wouldn't put anybody below this above him, which is why I didn't. I think there is kind of, for me, the tiers kind of go Mahomes 1, and then you've got Allen, Lamar, Herbert, Burrow. I don't know if that's what you meant by the bottom of tier 2. Is it Mahomes in a class by himself, and then these 4?
Well, we had this consensus of 5,
Yes, so I agree with that. This year was not a banner year for Burrow, but obviously he was playing through injury. But the last 2022 is really what vaulted him into like kind of unquestionable top 5 category. I just think, yes, he holds the ball sometimes and takes a lot of sacks, but when he wants to, like you said, and he wants to a lot, I don't know if there's anybody better at playing in structure and being accurate and hitting guys right in stride on time. And Jamar Chase is, hit and turning upfield, and he always breaks the first tackle. Like, yeah, Burrow is kind of dependent on the receivers winning one-on-one, but that's the way the offense is designed. Would you rather be dependent on
right? I mean, should he not over the middle?
Like you're right? Like he's got good receivers, yes, but he places the football about as well as you can. So it's not too much of a knock. I would love to shit on Burrow an insane amount because I said that he was overrated in 2020 and said that Bengals wouldn't repeat after they made it to the Super Bowl, but they just kept proving me wrong. And I have a lot of respect for Burrow these days as a master in structure guy and also someone who gives you a lot in terms of tackle breaking in the backfield and making things happen outside of structure. He's not quite as good at avoiding the negative plays as maybe the guys above him, but like you said, Matt, but he still belongs in the conversation because like when he's hot, I think he's more accurate and more precise than any of the guys above him too.
Yep. I mean, the only guy, honestly, that compares as far as like just the ridiculous accuracy, not to the point of where, he's hitting a guy, but to the point where he's hitting them so beautifully, so well in stride, is Stroud, honestly. That's the guy that comes to mind for me, who's his comparison. And pretty much everybody else, I feel like, is a serious step behind.
Yeah, and with the sack rate, it's gone from 8.9% in 2021 to 6.3 last year to 6.2 now. So it's getting even a little bit better. And as the offensive line improves, like yes, Burrow is going into his age 28 season. That's still pretty young though. Like I think he still has a good potentially 12 years left of play. Like I think that he's going to get an MVP under his belt at some point, or at least a first team All-Pro, because he doesn't have that yet either.
That is crazy to think about. He doesn't have a first team All-Pro, but I guess when it's Mahomes and Lamar.
And first team All-Pro is just like the MVP.
It's hard. Yeah. Pretty much. Yeah. Pretty much.
Yeah.
Does he have second team All-Pro? I can't tell. I don't know if it says on the PFR page.
Yeah, Pro Football Reference should say
he was 4th in MVP voting. I don't know if second team shows up though. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Who's number 5?
Number 6 is this is where we start to differentiate a little bit. We all had someone different for number 6, but the consensus came in as Matthew Stafford.
That was my number 6.
Yeah,
he
was my number 7. So I don't know.
Where did you have him, Theo?
I think I'm with you, Blaiden, at number 7, but I'm not. I mean, 6 and 7.
Yes,
who cares? I think Matthew Stafford reached his like peak craftiness last year somehow.
Yeah, and he's still got the arm. I was worried that it was done. It's not at all. And maybe we're playing a dangerous game because he's getting up there and at any point, the wheels could fall off. That's the age that we're at. But as it stands right now, he is a vet who is the best at creating he's ever been, still with a ridiculous arm. He's not insanely mobile, but he still makes it happen regardless. If there was going to be another guy in tier 2, to me, it would be him. And he's done it on the big stage. He's won a Super Bowl. He's the other guy who's still a serious QB who's gotten it done. And I don't mean to say that rings are the thing to look at for QBs. Obviously, they're not. But when they won that Super Bowl, they won it because he was great. He hit some big-time throws. I mean, the no-look pass, that was the play that really changed it. They went on a big drive. He was clutch. So he's done it for so long, and I think he's playing at such a high level right now. Maybe, year to year, it could be worse than that. I feel like the 6th spot is going to change every single season. And certainly he's in a good situation with good receivers, but that's true for a lot of guys.
Yeah, I think Stafford is still very, very scary to play against. I mean, he's made last year probably some of the best throws of the entire season. I mean, he can hit some crazy sidearm tight window throws.
His high-end stuff is insane.
I'll never forget the Rams Baltimore game last year. He didn't have a high completion percentage. I think he was he's 23 for 41 in that game. But some of the stuff he hit and they were just throws in the flat. It wasn't even anything too far down the field, but he'd be getting pressured and the release that he would hit and the arc the ball would have and where it lands, he's throwing before guys are even breaking. It just looked so bizarre, he was just seeing the game before it even played out. I feel like he's gotten so fine with age, or so much finer with age. He just still has the same toughness that he always had, but he just sees everything in slow motion, so the pressure just doesn't really affect him at all. He just
the game that I always think about, and I'm trying to find the play right now because I know I tweeted about it, is the Seahawks game. He had one throw. Here it is. I just found it to Tutu Atwell, where he's drifting to the left. He's got pressure kind of coming off. Yeah, he's got pressure coming on his right side, drifting to his left. Pulls the defense left and hits a sidearm as Tutu Atwell's breaking over the middle. And it's just the perfect window that he's able to create and hit on this throw. And I know he had a couple of really nice throws in this game, but that one stuck out to me. I'm like, oh my, because I think that was right after he was coming back from his injury. And I'm like, oh yeah, he's still got it. He's so back.
Yeah, his trick shot compilation is as good as anybody's has ever been, and really, I that's what I value in a quarterback. Seriously, as long as your numbers are good overall, sometimes that high end stuff is what sets you apart, and it's not like he misses a lot of easy ones either. And you say that his weapons are good, but how much of that is a credit to him? Puka Nacua was a sleeper for me. He shouldn't have fallen as far as he did, but still, he's a 5th rounder coming in and leading all time and rookie receiving yards. And Cooper Kupp was good before Stafford got there, but then Stafford gets there and he has the best receiver season ever. If I was a wide receiver and I could pick anybody in the league to play with, I might say Matthew Stafford. That guy's got maybe the best 2 receiver seasons ever under his belt with Calvin Johnson and Cooper Kupp, and he has the best rookie wide receiver season ever, under his belt. He's kind of creating all of this.
It's not a coincidence.
There's new guys on the scene always. Stroud, Jordan Love. There's been familiar names like Dak and Trevor Lawrence for a couple years now, or whoever you want to say. But I just feel like Stafford has just gotten better and better, and he was the MVP candidate that nobody talked about, just consistent all year. Took a team that wasn't supposed to do anything to the playoffs. Super efficient. He was great. He would have been a great dark horse candidate, but doesn't get the respect he deserves because he's a little bit older, I think. Just not quite as sexy.
Yeah. But Stafford was number 6. At number 7, we have the quarter Dak. I'm always trying to get that joke off. Dak Prescott. I was actually kind of surprised to see him come in this high on the consensus stay. I don't know, but maybe not on the consensus stay hot list. I feel like we're all pretty big Dak guys. But yeah, you talk about a guy that's just consistently good, and we always say he probably needs another weapon as well. Dak is always kind of in, the mold of a just premier top-end pocket passer.
He's in the mold of Peyton Manning. Like,
yeah,
he really is. Like, you need a guy that gets it done with no motion. Like, he just lines up, sets the play to how he likes it, and then is aggressive with his throws from the pocket. Like, that's Dak Prescott more than anybody else in the league right now. I feel like it's just it hasn't translated to the playoffs, but the sample size of playoff games combined to the sample size of regular season games kind of wins out for me. And that's why I still got him pretty high on my top 10. Like, he's coming off maybe his best season. So I think that I had him at 6. He's out of the top 5 for me because of those playoff numbers, but man, this regular season was pretty special from him. He hit so many high-end throws every game. His pocket presence was immaculate. I mean, he just stood there, and yeah, I don't know if anybody's better than him as a pure pocket passer right now.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I had him at 7. So far, the list is exactly what I put down, so I'm pretty happy about that.
That's true. I had him at 8.
But the tough playoff performances are definitely a valid concern, and I think the sample size on them is starting to get big enough where it's fair to knock him down. But if he was great in the playoffs like he was in the regular season, then he'd be in that tier 2, right? So I feel like putting him where we put him is knocking him down for those. And besides, everybody behind them also has had their struggles or is maybe really, really old, like one guy in particular hasn't done a ton in the playoffs. There's maybe played 1 or 2 games. So I think it's completely valid to have him here. MVP seasons where you get your team to the divisional round or the playoffs or the wild card are also super valuable. And I don't think his supporting cast, at least on offense, is nearly as good as it used to be and is nearly as good as it's hyped up to be right now. I mean, CD is a beast. He's up there with just about any receiver, and I'm sure he's going to finish very, very high on our wide receiver rankings that we're going to do here relatively soon. Yeah. But outside of that, the offensive line has seen better days, and the weapons outside of CD are really not that strong. So what he was able to do last season and have his best year, like you said, despite that, incredibly impressive. And I think at 7, if anything, he should be 6 or 5 or whatever. Well, not 5.
The run game being so non-existent is very jarring as well. Like, that's the big thing that sticks out. Like, they just have no other way to move the football down the field other than go get shit done, Dak. Like, pretty please.
And CD, really, like, they have one of the biggest liabilities as a starting receiver last year in Michael Gallup. Like, he was invisible most games, and he was one of their best 11 a lot of the time when they were in 11 personnel. So, it wasn't always pretty it hasn't been pretty for Dak in the playoffs, and it is starting to add up a little bit. But, a lot of these guys are either young, and I want to see it another year, like Stroud or Jordan Love. Some of them, like Kyler, like he hasn't had the playoff success that Dak hasn't. Jalen Hurts sort of has, but he kind of took a step back, and Dak took a step forward in the regular seasons. So, I put Dak a little bit ahead Hurts. So I can't see again. There's Purdy, who you could say had the regular season success and the playoff success, but again, I think that his team is just so stacked that he's more in the right place at the right time than Dak Prescott is.
I don't know. I didn't want to knock Purdy too hard. I considered him, but
he's not here.
He's not.
On that
he's not here.
Consensus
he's
top
not.
10.
No.
Yeah, he had such a good year that he warrants some consideration, but I just think, man, it's so easy with Kittle and Ayuk and the top left tackle and McCaffrey cutting through the defense like butter all the time. And I think that
You got
he's
Shanahan calling the plays, and
yeah, I think he's probably in the top 15 somewhere, but I don't necessarily think like he's like what has changed from when Garoppolo led the 49ers to the Super Bowl, right? Like
nothing.
The supporting cast and the defense is like honestly better now. And I think Purdy is better than Garoppolo, but if Garoppolo could lead them to the Super Bowl, like lots of guys in this top 10 probably could. So that's why I don't have Purdy on here, especially over Dak.
Yeah, especially over Dak. But Dak was at number 7. I think that's a very fair warranting spot. I had him at 8. And our consensus number 8 is CJ Stroud, who I had at number 6.
Damn, high. I had him at 10, but that's just because he's a rookie and I wanted to see it one more year. I get it.
I guess, yeah. But he was awesome, man.
I don't think I need to see one more year. I had him at 8. So,
it's
so
just
far,
Matt's
so
list.
good, man. I do.
Hold on, let me just.
I've always been a middle
Bro
bowl
is
of
the
porridge
median,
guy, but
median voter. Both political parties will be ringing off the hook.
But I didn't see either of your lists before we started that. For the record, I made this completely today.
I'm the only one who has seen all 3 lists.
I have some opinions that we can get to at the very end of this list that sort of explain why Stroud is here at 8. But to be completely honest with you, a lot of my concerns about him just didn't end up being true. The Georgia game was CJ Stroud. That was the real him. And all the other film at Ohio State, I honestly think he was holding back as a creator because Ryan Day was scared to get him hurt. That's what my opinion is as an Ohio State fan, even though my Ohio State pennant has fallen down in the middle of this recording, I believe, from behind me. He is incredibly aggressive and incredibly accurate, and he has a very strong arm. Now, the decision-making, obviously, a little bit shaky. Sometimes maybe he makes the rookie mistakes still. But if I was asking myself, who do I want to take going into next season, which I think is what we should do, in a vacuum, not considering their supporting cast around him, because like I said before, Justin Herbert with a bad supporting cast versus
them like
CJ Stroud.
Like, think about them like you're making a big board almost.
Not taking into account their age and not taking into account their contract. Yeah. I wouldn't take anybody below CJ, or I wouldn't take anybody outside of the top 7 above him. I think that he's going to take another step. I think that he has a chance to be a serious MVP candidate. And part of that is because he's on a really good offense, but part of that is because he does enough himself. He could finish, if he really reaches like his ceiling, he could finish in the top 5 here. He could be right up there with Burrow, or he could start climbing up to that Stafford or Burrow or Herbert level. Mm-hmm. It's totally within him. Now, maybe it doesn't happen this very year, but eventually, I don't think that's a projection or a best case scenario. I think that's the expectation. He's incredibly good. Yeah. And I understand if we want to wait a little bit because he's so young, and maybe I'm getting out ahead of myself. But I disagree. I think this is the median average projection for the leap that he should take. If he looks like he did at the end of last season for an entire year, this is where he's going to fall, maybe even higher.
Yeah, I really do think that he has a very good case to be better than Burrow at like by the end of next year.
I don't want to call out Burrow particularly because honestly, these two guys are kind of similar. There's a lot of similarities. It's the aggression and the accuracy. Yes. And it maybe felt like at some point that during the evaluation process that Stroud didn't have a superpower that would elevate him into that top status, but the accuracy is. The accuracy combined with what he wants to do and the fact that he can hit every throw is completely ridiculous.
Yep. That's really it. I look at the accuracy and I'm like, that's kind of Burrow-esque, but Burrow has Jamar and T. Higgins, you know? So you can kind of get away with just be like, oh yeah, I'll just put it there. And not only am I going to put together a great throw, but I know my guy is going to come down with it. As opposed to like, and the Texans have a good set of weapons, but they don't have anyone like that. But I also think Stroud just kind of moves a little bit better than Burrow does. And I think that's probably going to be the thing that sets him apart.
He's a little bit more of a threat on the ground than maybe once let on. And I think that really leads back to Ryan Day.
Yeah.
Telling his guys to pull back. And I genuinely, I feel very strongly about this. This isn't some thing I've imagined. Stroud never, ever, ever, ever ran at Ohio State. Even times where it was very clearly obvious, like he could jog for a first down, he wouldn't do it. Undoubtedly, he was coached to be like that. And there is no question that it's because Justin Fields got banged up. And it may have cost Ohio State a shot at the national title in Ryan Day's first couple of seasons. And I think since then he's been if my quarterback goes down, I'm much done.
Either compared to like he went under a complete change as a player from Ohio State to.
He didn't run nearly as much as he did for the Bears, but he certainly was more willing of a runner than C.J. Stroud was in college, at least. And he would get banged up, and there were times he still played through it, but he would play very injured. And there were times like the Clemson game in 2020 where he just got crushed and had to do the Cam Newton, I'm barely able to get back out there. And then he went and balled out, of course, or against Michigan. And I think 2019, he got, crushed and he came out and then the next play, both times comes back and throws a touchdown. But that's beside the point. We've kind of gotten a little bit away from C.J. Stroud, but he's a great player.
We got away from NFL C.J. Stroud. We're just on Ohio State C.J. Stroud.
That's true. That's true. Regardless, I'm just explaining why I think the high end predictions for Stroud, like everybody who was high on him, ended up being right, and why I think some of the concerns that we had about him have not ended up being true. And I do want to make it clear, he's got a good supporting cast. He had a very good supporting cast last year. It was not, okay, well, here's 2 top 10 receivers. It's so easy for you. Everything is Tank Dell for most of the season and Nico Collins and Schultz. That's good stuff. But I feel like that's just above average, strong, good receiving options.
That's rather than what you're supposed to surround. It doesn't feel like
the pass catchers are the superpower of that offense, or what's leading that offense, I should say.
Yeah, there's a reason Stroud was an MVP candidate at a point last year. He deserved it.
He's ridiculous. I'll say I had him at 10. I thought maybe I got to get out of the calculator, but the Texans were probably lower than you would expect in terms of their total offense last year. Like they were 13th in dropback EPA. They weren't top 10 as good as Stroud was in that area. Like they were one ahead of Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars in terms of placement. And I think the thing that Stroud needs to do to raise himself to the next level, and I think he'll do it, I haven't seen it yet, is he does have to eliminate some of the bad sacks that we've talked about with some of these other guys. Like some of these other guys have completely eliminated it from their game. Stroud still north of 7% for his sack rate. Now he made up for that with not throwing any picks last year, which is great. So it's tough to even say he takes a lot of negative plays, but maybe he does hold the ball a bit long, and he wasn't as good as some of these other guys versus pressure last season. But the accuracy, the arm talent, he came in and had one of the best rookie seasons ever.
Well, his pressure to sack rate is better than Burrow's has pretty much ever been.
Maybe I'm too high on Burrow, man. Maybe he does suck, dude.
He does Burrow does take a lot of sacks. It's worth it. And again, we've got him in the top 5 and rightfully so. Yeah. But he still does take sacks that he shouldn't. He still does hold on to the ball a long time. And this is such a difficult thing to talk about. Nobody wants to say a guy with a bad offensive line is also maybe taking some sacks. And I've seen people go too far with it on Twitter relatively recently, where they're like, dude, sacks are completely a quarterback stat. It's like, well, that's not true. Here's a clip of a guy getting sacked in 1 second. Okay, so that was his fault.
Yeah.
But they're more of a quarterback stat than the average fan thinks. And I feel like maybe people who are on Twitter a lot agree with that, but the average fan, you're talking to your coworkers, think that sacks are completely an offensive line stat,
Yeah.
Coworker ball knowledge disagrees entirely.
Coworker ball knowledge is extremely different than Twitter ball knowledge. Extremely different.
It's worse.
Oh yeah, actually, it's way worse.
I don't.
Twitter
I
at least
sure
there's
no
some
one
general set of
listens to this podcast.
You want to get to Twitter or not? You want to get to coworker takes? Go look at Instagram comment sections. That's at about the same level.
That's a good way to put it.
Instagram.
That is a good way to put it.
think that like
Your
Lamar
coworkers
is
are
probably
talking
bottom
ball
5.
on Instagram.
They are. They're not on Twitter.
Facebook comment sections. Like,
yes.
Facebook actually
The
might even
average
have better
coworker.
more ball knowers than Instagram. I feel like Instagram
never
Facebook's
comment
like
scrolled
sections
team
are a
Facebook
Facebook
disaster.
pages are hilarious, man. I love them.
Are they? I've never even. I don't know.
You
if
never go
the
look?
culture.
I'm in a Browns Facebook group.
I've looked at like.
You've never even glanced.
At what? What do I type?
Go on
Message
Facebook
boards
right
and
now, Theo.
team message boards and groups are fantastic, dude. You are entirely missing out if you've never looked at them. They're almost
No,
always hilarious. Reddit sometimes is hit or miss. Like sometimes you'll get a group that's really funny and sometimes it's very serious. And they're always talking about like, I'm tired of this subreddit talking about this. And then they'll be like, this is why the team is no good because you guys are saying this in the subreddit. But even that is super funny, really. So, or college football message boards are the absolute top tier stuff. Yes, dude. This negativity is why we aren't very good right now. It's like, I don't know.
The team is like, well,
you guys have never seen it. I see it on Twitter every once in a while too. I'll have to go find some. Reddit is
these
hilarious.
3,000 fans on Reddit are why the team sucks.
Yeah, like I mean, it's beside the quarterback.
I have not spent
point,
much
but-
time. I have not spent much time outside of Twitter and Instagram looking at
I'm a
what
huge
people are
Reddit
saying.
fan. I love looking on Reddit. Anybody pretending that Reddit isn't funny, go to absolutely any interest and just search like the most controversial post. Hilarious every time. I mean,
That's fair. I'm just curious. Like on Facebook, is it just all boomers? Like, are they just like?
Pretty much.
yeah.
We need to run.
It's just very interesting how far, and they're right.
They are. They're right.
Do we want to
Sometimes
move
I'll
on
get
to who we
into,
have
like-
in mind? Oh, my fault.
No, I want to keep talking about. Sometimes I'll get in like a coach's press conference on YouTube, and it's like happening live, and you can see the comments like scrolling at the bottom of the screen. That's funny. They're just like any vocal tick that they have will just get like made fun of. Like, why are they saying so much? This is why we lost. Like, there's no decisiveness. Like, or they'll like try to ask him a question like they're the reporters, or they'll try to get the reporters to ask him something like, ask him why Tua is the worst quarterback ever, like 50,000 times. Like, they're not listening, bro. The reporters aren't going to ask you a question. But anyway, now
They're probably not watching the stream, but yeah. So Stroud was number 8. Number 9, we have the quarterback in probably the worst situation on this list, Trevor Lawrence.
I know my ranking of him is carrying probably a little bit in this.
Where
You
did you
have
have him?
him-
6? Where did you have him?
I had him
1?
at 7, 8.
You had him at 8.
Or did I
You
have
had him at 8. I had him at 9.
Okay, it's not that high.
And Matt, you had him at 12.
Right. Because he's not very accurate, man. Point blank, period, dude. Like, he's just not that accurate, to be honest with you. And maybe this is a little low because he hasn't played with great weapons or on a great offense. But honestly, I have to at least see it once before I can totally buy in on that, you know? I've seen everybody else play some really, really great ball on this list, and he's been very good, but he's never had some like great statistical season. And I agree,
But
like
2022 was pretty damn good. Was it not?
I agree the pocket presence for him is really strong. I can get down with that, and he's got a huge arm. But I don't know. I think the accuracy really holds him back, and I think it gets overlooked because the receivers are not that great.
I disagree. I think that his accuracy is fine. I think it's not as good as Stroud's, but I do think his pocket presence is maybe the best in the league. PFF has a stat that does track how many sacks are on the quarterback versus like the left guard versus the left tackle versus the center. Like if the center gets beat in a second and it's a sack, it'll go down as a center sack. But if the quarterback misses something or holds it, it'll go down by him. And I haven't fact checked them on everything, but Trevor Lawrence has only been responsible for like 7 of his own sacks behind this garbage offensive line for 2 years. I think that his pocket presence is maybe tops in the league. I would say it's pretty damn close. I think his
Lamar's up
accuracy
there.
is. Yeah, I think Trevor's is so good though. It's at least a tier 1 trait for him. Like if we're just going that trait alone, I'd put Lawrence tier 1. He's just as good outside the numbers as he is over the middle. He's good under pressure. He's aggressive down the field. I think that the Jaguars have really tried to surround him with weapons. Like the Calvin Ridley move was a good attempt, but Ridley, there's an element of physicality and I think explosiveness that is lacking to their receiving core. So I think Lawrence is very good. I think he's gotten a bit unlucky, and I rate him pretty highly.
What do you say? You say if they had taller receivers, they'd have
10 more
so
touchdowns,
many more
or whatever.
Right, because Lawrence keeps missing throws.
Does he miss throws, or is deep ball accuracy a wide receiver stat, and he's putting him in a as good of a place as you can expect? It's just like, man, they just didn't get both feet down. And
Maybe
and really,
you should
it's
throw
like,
it short more often.
I just think in the future, there's going to be a lot of people who regret fading Trevor Lawrence. Mark my words. I think that
I'm not fading Trevor Lawrence. See, here's the thing. I think I'm
not even
still
talking
a
about
franchise
you.
quarterback.
I'm not even talking about ranking him 12th here, but there are some people who really don't like him.
Maybe I'm too low on him at 12 then. Maybe I should have him above a couple of the guys that I have it. I could see him at 10, but outside of that, I don't know. Maybe 9.
I mean, I can't be
I'm
that mad.
I'm not putting him.
I'm not that mad just because there's a tier of Prescott, who we've talked about, Stafford, Lawrence, Hurts, Stroud. I think Jordan Love kind of put himself in that tier towards the end, and like maybe Kyler, where you're kind of splitting hairs. I think.
Yeah, I agree.
I think the gap between like 9 and 12, or even 6 and 12, is pretty low. So I'm not that mad if you put Trevor Lawrence like in consideration for this list, but some people really, really do not.
Some people
like
think
Trevor
that he
Lawrence.
hasn't like been good at all. I guess his 2022 season maybe was better than I think. I could see that. And some people don't think he's a franchise quarterback. I do. And talking through it, maybe he should be a couple spots higher on my list. But I don't regret not having him. And we're talking about 9. I don't think I quite would have put him there.
I think that's fair.
Fair enough.
I do disagree slightly with how you're tiering things out, though, Theo. I would say there's Mahomes as 1 by himself. Then there's the rest of the top 5 in a tier by themselves. Then there's, I would say, the third tier is Stroud, Stafford, and Dak.
Stroud, Stafford, and Dak. What puts Stroud like so crazy high, like above Jordan Love for you? I feel like their seasons were kind of similar.
Maybe they were, but Stroud. What were you saying?
Stroud way above Love.
I have Jordan Love at 9
in the top. Okay.
I thought that was one of the hardest decisions I had to make, was Love or Stroud. Which one I thought was next.
I think they're kind of.
I think both of those guys are insane. Jordan Love in the back half of the season, with how he's able to create, and I still think about that back-footed throw he had in the playoffs. Dude, he's ridiculous, man. And he didn't, again, he's a guy.
Of the season. Stroud did it the whole season.
Stroud came along in the back half of the season as well, I think.
I mean, Stroud started.
What specifically?
I mean, the Packers' passing offense, like overall this season, was probably
fantastic,
above where the Texans ended up statistically.
And I don't think that's the end all be all. There's a lot of moving parts, but it's not like Love was on some insane stacked super team or anything.
Yeah.
I mean, going into the season, we would have maybe really questioned whether or not the receivers were even that great at all, right? Mm-hmm. I think there's a real argument for Jordan Love above Stroud. I think that's a pick 'em. I think either one of those guys could break out and do something insane this year. It wouldn't surprise me if either of those guys finished top 5 in MVP voting. I 100% agree. I think Jordan Love, not as accurate as Stroud, but I think maybe even more of like a platform thrower and probably a little bit better at avoiding sacks. Although honestly, I haven't looked at the number, and that's kind of a gut check. And maybe the pressure to sack
you're right.
is better for Love.
You're right about that. But the Packers' EPA per dropback this year was 4th. The Texans was 13th. And I think part of that is on Slowick being overrated more than like CJ Stroud is clearly below Jordan Love or anything like that. The Packers had a much better rushing game that opens things up for Jordan Love. Like it's not that simple, but I do think that I find it difficult to rank Stroud and like Love. And then like if Trevor Lawrence was out of Jacksonville, where I think they were kind of in disarray this year with Doug Peterson giving up the play calling to someone who's not as talented, to a receiving core that kind of didn't put it all together, to an offensive line that really struggled more than Green Bay's or Houston's did. It's like if you put Trevor Lawrence with Matt LaFleur and that deep of a receiving core, could he have been balling? Could LaFleur get them to top 5 in passing EPA per play? Like I think they could. So I just don't quite. I think it's all kind of one tier after that, and it's tough for me to really parse
franchise guys
through.
Who will probably move in ranking based off situation.
I guess that's a fair way to look at it. I
don't know if they're all in the, but I could see maybe Dak and Stafford being in a special tier because I think they've done it for like many years straight in a row now. I could see that maybe being true.
That's very fair.
They're the consistent.
I could get down with that, but then if you told me like Stroud or Love has a better season next year than Dak or Stafford, I just wouldn't be shocked.
No, I wouldn't be so shocked either.
Maybe I am just too low on Love. Maybe
look, Jordan Love and CJ Stroud, I know they're young, but both of those guys put up good numbers and have serious wow moments, not only in the regular season, but in the playoffs. There's just not that many guys doing that, man. There's not that many guys out there like that. I mean, I could keep them down artificially because they're young if that's what we want to do. And I'm sure people would be like, all right, fine. But I'm just not going to.
But anyway, who's at 10 then? Because
number
we've said
10,
all these names.
Thank God, Jalen Hurts.
I
was very scared. I was very scared he was going to fall out. But
I think in retrospect, I'd move him down a spot. But I think 10 is pretty valid. I know that sometimes he can struggle to hit necessarily every single throw. But he's done a really phenomenal job in the Eagles offense in the past. I know they have great weapons, but part of the reason why that offense is so special is because of what he is as a rushing threat. I mentioned the best rushing threats earlier in this episode, and I didn't bring him up. That was a mistake. He's a fantastic blend of speed and power, and he really likes to use his power, and he does it effectively. And on top of that, he's got pretty good accuracy down the field at times. I know this wasn't their best seasons in offense, but I don't want to move him too down.
He was banged up a lot this year, so
that's true.
I give him somewhat of a pass for that. But that's going to be something that he has to deal with going forward, I think, as well, considering how he functions as a runner. I don't think you can be a power runner and not expect to deal with some injuries. So that's going to be a trade-off that they have to deal with. But I do think the power running is something that like no other quarterback really does, not the way he does it. Like Allen will run over people if he has to, but Jalen Hurts, they just run like straight up QB power with him like all the time. And they're just like, yeah, man, you're going to have to meet a linebacker in the A gap.
Or how about the tush push, right? I mean, he gets
that's huge. And he's a huge part of that. And that is a superpower for the team to have. Yeah. And here's the thing, even with like, this Eagles year was super bad. Statistically, their offense was still really good. And statistically, Hurts like EPA wise was still really high up there. So there's definitely some like, maybe some limitations because he's also a little bit of a shorter guy and he doesn't have the craziest arm. So I can get if like you're gambling on a guy like Lawrence, which I get, that's not even really gambling. That's just saying a more traditional dude a little bit and saying if he was in a better offense, he would be putting up crazy numbers as well. I think that's pretty valid. But I'm also still calling Hurts a franchise quarterback and I'm not thinking about it twice, even if he is in a very good situation.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. I mean, the 2022 Eagles is about as good as offense can get, and a lot of it was built around Hurts's strengths. He has a few more obvious weaknesses than maybe the other guys. Like, yeah, the arm talent is an A plus, and he's a bit quick to flee the pocket, but his downfield accuracy is special. So you got to keep two guys high to account for that and the receiving threats, and then he'll just run on you, right? And it's pretty tough to deal with. It's very tough to deal with.
That's super annoying.
He just shreds you in man coverage because he's so accurate. He gotten really good reading the field and throwing with anticipation. I think he's pretty great. And I think that really the big point of failure this year was their defense more than anything Jalen Hurts was doing to any crazy degree. He had a great statistical season. It was a little underwhelming based on what happened in 2022, but that could happen to anybody. Anybody can have an amazing, second and MVP type year and not hit that the following year and still be good. It doesn't mean that they suck now. So, yeah, Hurts has been a huge weapon for one of the most successful offenses over the last 2 years. I don't want to completely just ignore 2022 because it wasn't the most recent season. And yeah, I think 10's a fair spot for him. I put him above Love just because I want to see. Love was maybe the best quarterback in the league for the past like 10 weeks of the season. At least statistically, he was up there.
Yeah.
But I want to see a little bit more before I put him above names like Hurts. Geno was another name that I thought about who's kind of in that tier. We talked about the franchise guys. Geno's
a tough guy to rank.
Between like 6 and 13, depending on supporting cast. Geno's in that tier as well.
Geno's a tough guy to rank. Geno's tough to rank, I think, based off of last year because the offensive line was a complete disaster. So, I don't know. Kyler was a guy we haven't talked about a whole lot, but he was an honorable mention as well, along with Jordan Love, a guy that we all ranked in the top 12, but none of us were confident enough to put him in the top 10. It felt like, and I feel like that mostly stems from injuries. Mm-hmm. That would be my guess, is he's just been so banged up, and it's not all due to his size. So it's like how much of it is just gonna be recurring injuries at this point.
Yeah. For Murray, I think that he's going to have a big resurgence next year. I really do.
I agree.
I think that adding Marv is going to do kind of reminds me of what you talked about with the Timberwolves. Like, a number 2 is now a number 2, and a number 3 is now a number 3 instead of them trying to be a number 1. Like,
pushing everybody down a spot.
Trey McBride is going to be such a good second option as opposed to like your most valuable weapon. Same thing with Greg Dortch, right? Like he's not your best receiver anymore. Like that's going to be good for him. Right. That's going to be great for Kyler. And I think Kyler came in last year off the injury with no expectations, and I think that's going to be good for him playing outside of a Kingsbury system for the first time in the NFL. I thought that he made an effort to keep his eyes downfield and take what the defense was giving him underneath. And they had a pretty brutal stretch of defenses that they played. And they still won 3 games with Kyler with basically no output from the wide receivers at all. So now that Marv is there, I think that Kyler is going to come in without feeling much pressure, in a good situation with a good offensive coordinator, a good running game, and really ball out. But we haven't seen it in a while, so I didn't put him in the top 10. But I like that he's an honorable mention.
I think I had him. Yeah, I had him right on that cusp.
It's close.
A couple of guys I'll say quickly while we're sort of hitting our non-top 10 that I didn't have even in my top 12. Geno is there. I like him a lot. I feel like I'm higher than average, but I agree. We just sort of haven't seen it quite enough, and last year wasn't great. And I just
he didn't have the same sort of like superhuman accuracy, and I don't think his arm is quite as powerful as some of these other guys, and he's a bit on the older side. Yeah. But he's still very accurate. His pocket presence is pretty great. Like he attacks down the field and attacks tight windows like we like. So he definitely fits the franchise quarterback mold. Just wasn't quite enough output last year for me.
Cousins, to me, and a great offense, was really great. I probably would have had him right on this cusp of being in my top 10, top 12, but he's not some superhuman some superhuman like franchise quarterback, and he's coming off that Achilles tear, which makes me really nervous for a guy who's older. I guess he's not like the craziest mobile guy ever, but when you're borderline and you're coming off of an injury that major, it made him a little easy to push him down. And Rodgers, kind of the same thing, except I'm even more negative on him. I think a lot of Rodgers' creation ability has started to go even before the injury, and he's 40 years old and he's coming off the Achilles. I'm interested to see how that offense plays out. I'm certainly not going to say it's impossible that he, comes out and looks like his, 38-year-old self instead of his 40-year-old self, which would be an MVP. But I also think it's totally possible that for a 40-year-old, the Achilles is a death sentence. I mean, that's a brutal injury to come back from that late. We've basically never seen anybody try to play this late off an injury that big. And the history of Achilles tears, I know that Kevin Durant was able to come back and be great, but for most athletes, it's really, really hard.
What is the history of Achilles tears in the NFL?
It's not very good.
And Durant was even substantially younger than Rodgers is. And the other thing about Rodgers is he's just grumpy, right? Like you don't really know what you're going to get from him with the Jets. Like I think there's going to be some major chemistry with Garrett Wilson, but it's like, man, I've seen Rodgers when he's in modes where he's just sick of his situation. He's sick of the play calling. He's quick to throw things away. He's not as aggressive as he should be, and his accuracy kind of suffers. Like I've seen him get in that mode when he's frustrated. The years before LaFleur were like that. This most recent year on the Packers was a little bit like that. I don't think, even if he's like fine, like the Achilles isn't affecting him. Like you said, Matt, he's coming off a down year. He's not coming off the 2 straight MVPs, and there can be some frustrating flaws with his game if he's not in the kind of ideal situation these days. It feels like, or the ideal situation for him, like mentally.
A down year that is just like him being 39 years old. Like one guy has ever been good at this age, and it's Tom Brady, and Brady didn't tear his Achilles. Yeah, I mean, we're talking about an insane outlier, and I'm not out on the idea that it could happen. But I'll tell you this: if I told Packers fans right now, it's like, would you rather have C.J. Stroud or Love next year? Like, I don't even think that would be a question. Like, yeah, screw taking the risk on the 40-year-old Rodgers stuff.
Right?
I'm doing that, no question. Well, no, I'm saying like if I told the Jets that they could take, definitely. Like any of the guys that I had in the top 10. Oh, would you rather have them or would you rather have Rodgers next season?
It wouldn't even be close.
It wouldn't even be close.
Oh yeah, Rodgers.
So he's kind of a wild card.
Like Purdy to me, like.
Yeah,
and Purdy is probably another one of those guys that I would consider to be up there. Like I think he's been very solid. I know he's been on a great offense, but he's done some good stuff. To me, it's just a little bit more of that game manager-y stuff. I'm not going to lie to you guys.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
One more guy that we should. Oh, go ahead, Theo.
I was going to say he's better than Garoppolo. I know I invoked that name earlier. Like he creates more out of structure, and they've opened up the offense to attack down the field more with Purdy at the helm. I think Shanahan knows that Purdy is better, and it reflects in his play calling. So he's not just like another Garoppolo. He's better than that. But it's like if Garoppolo could get to the Super Bowl with these weapons in this system, Purdy can get to the Super Bowl in these weapons in this system. It's like I think everybody else above them can as well. I don't know what Purdy offers that is better necessarily than the people above him, but he is pretty fast. He's pretty like twitchy. Like he can outrun people in that Lions playoff game. You saw it all the time. He's accurate. Like he does stand in there and absolutely rip it over the middle. And allow for these yak plays to happen. Some guys really avoid the middle. So Purdy does some nice things. I don't want this to be a slander session. I've come around to the idea that Purdy is better than Tua. Blaiden, you said that earlier, and I was like, I don't know, but I think I do agree with that.
Yeah, I think he is.
Just ranking
Tua's. I do feel a little bad for Tua because it's like the concussion stuff was really I think that really hurt him a lot. And just his overall injury history is just disgusting.
It's brutal.
It is one of the worst injury histories I've ever seen. Just in terms of just in terms of how long it is, man. It's horrible. But yeah, that's the only thing that's like really scary for me with Tua. Then there's Goff, which he's
Kinda
made
same deal as
a
Purdy.
big. Just. It's. I think a lot of people are just higher on Goff because like he's been to a Super Bowl before with the Rams, and this kind of feels like a resurgence of his career more so.
He's
than, like,
really
he's
good.
doing
I mean,
it
he's
for
a
the
really
first
good
time.
game manager. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's completely valid to say, but I wouldn't give him a massive contract. I'd be very nervous
I
about
would
doing
not.
something like that and giving him, even though the numbers are great, there's a little bit more to it than EPA. And I think he had one of his best seasons last year. And if somebody told me that they had him in their top 12,
I think he had his best season last year.
I think
best
that's fair
season.
to
Like if somebody
say.
told me they had him in their top 12 and they said, well, his receivers aren't, that like I could hear it out. I don't want to be low on Goff. But there's a lot of good quarterbacks.
And their offensive line is really good.
Yeah, their offensive line is really good. I think every guy that we've mentioned here, even in this section outside, is still a good quarterback.
Yes.
Yeah, I think so
that's
too.
okay.
Goff was playing with a lot of confidence last year behind that offensive line. He never really felt like he was going to be under major pressure, and I think that translated into his game. Like he was feeling good and playing well. Like he was testing tight windows, and he had some really great highlight throws where he was super accurate and stood under pressure and launched that thing. And I thought he was great, and it ended in 30 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, 60.3 QBR, like all good numbers. But I think at the peak of their powers, the guys in my top 12 could surpass what Goff did. And I do think Goff is kind of peaking right now. I think it's a hypothetical, man, right? Like it might all be a hypothetical, man, but it's really not. Like I think a lot of the guys that I've mentioned have had seasons at least that good at some point. But
Lawrence behind that offensive line, man, would have a.
I think it would be better. I do. I think it would be better. Like as prospects, like breaking this down, like it's almost draft, like a draft big board. I would take Lawrence before I take Goff for next season.
But I have Goff right outside. Like he would probably be 13 for me. Like we put it. We each gave a top 12. And that's how we built out the consensus. But I think I would have Goff probably right at 13. So, yeah, still very good. But once again, I'll run through the top 10 just so everyone has that fresh in their mind. Number 1, Mahomes. Number 2, Allen. Number 3, Lamar. Number 4, Herbert. Number 5, Burrow. Number 6, Stafford. 7, Dak. 8, Stroud. 9, Lawrence. 10, Hurts.
Banger list, honestly. There's no way people are that mad at it in the comments.
You can't.
Oh yeah, there is.
There's no way. No way.
What could they be? That's so it's so common sense. It's so common sense.
It's look.
All knowers have
Not
to
only
know.
is our list good, it's obvious. And if you disagree, I don't know what to tell you.
This is what
man.
I'm saying. Like, how can you do? It's so perfect.
How could you? Well, there's guys who put up good numbers, put up top 10 numbers who we didn't have in our top 10, and that's us saying
they suck.
Men lie, women lie, and numbers lie.
Trevor Lawrence has a bigger bag, though. And it's
you don't think the Lawrence stuff will make people mad? I don't know what to tell you, buddy.
The Lawrence stuff might make people mad. That will be and Hurts maybe. I feel like people might be mad at Hurts too.
He's a Clemson guy. I'm never going to defend him that much.
Go watch the 49ers game. Lawrence is having like
Lawrence
We're
is
gonna say Kyler is
game.
too low.
He's having like a completely fine game, and yet they cannot do anything against the 49ers because the offensive line is deteriorating. The receivers are taking forever to get open. And there's like
Brian Thomas Jr. better be the greatest receiver of all time, dude.
I'm taking him in fantasy, man. He's exactly what they need. He's tall and he's explosive and he's physical. He's exactly what Lawrence needs. I was thinking about this as I was putting my rankings together today. I'm like, man, I really couldn't have scripted a better wide receiver for them than Brian Thomas Jr.
Wow, I can't believe they.
I guess I could. Roma Dunze, Marvin Harrison. You're right.
Yeah, why didn't they trade up to take Marv? What's wrong with them? Are they stupid?
Yeah. They might be. Anyway, Blaiden, by the way, check Sleeper. I re-upped our Dynasty League.
Oh, no. What do I need to do?
I don't know. Probably just log in.
Okay. I've got Tommy DeVito starting at quarterback. This is not looking good.
In the Sleeper League? That cannot be
What the
true.
hell happened?
Oh, wait, that's in the 32-team league. That's in the 32
Okay.
team.
Oh, shoot, I forgot about the 32-team league. We got to re-up that.
You got to kick Zach out for losing.
Shit.
And
Wait, Blaiden, where did you finish?
I think I was second to last.
I'm gonna kick out the bottom 4 and like
Is it? Oh,
my two oldest friends both immediately like tanked, man. I mean, to be bottom 4 in the 32-team league, you have to understand, you have to pick like 0 good players. They're putting up like 25 points.
Here's the crazy thing. Here's the crazy thing. I want to go through so that you understand.
You took a bunch of
quarterbacks. You
picked
a bunch of quarterbacks, and then they all got hurt.
They all got hurt. That's not my fault.
But it is your fault that
you
have no good players on the roster. If you take 4 quarterbacks,
here's the thing: is I still had good players
in a 30. No, you didn't.
My receivers were DeAndre Hopkins and Rashee Rice.
The 32 team, you know.
And I had the Browns defense, man. And I had the Browns.
And he went
defense.
right to the defense. Let's hear those running backs, buddy.
Who are your running backs? If you spend all your resources on quarterback.
I'm in that same league, dude. I could check my own personal.
Tyler Algier was my RB1.
And who?
my DJ Dallas.
All right, come on, dude.
That's your starting plan too. Like if anything were to happen to those guys.
Well, let me look like week 1, because I think I might have traded someone.
We're too long into it. And I just need you to know that next Monday.
No, it was Tyler Algier
Eastern time. We'll have a draft, and it's only the rookies, so it's only 3 picks. So it's not going to be like we all sit down and do a deal.
DJ Dallas finished the year with 32 yards.
Man, at least I would have
been so
Rico
sad
Dowdle was like your
if
genius.
All of my
Rico
quarterbacks didn't get hurt.
He's a solid RB too. I think he finished around 60th in running back points, and that makes him viable in 32 team.
I got him.
If my quarterbacks had just not been hurt, man. I had Anthony Richardson. Who else did I have? I had Anthony Richardson.
Anyway, if you've made it this far in the podcast, write a application in the comments section on why you should replace Blaiden in the 32-person league.
Yeah, you're replacing Blaiden and Zach, and
because we need 4 more people then.
So
I don't know if there's like a wait list though that's already been.
I have no idea how I'm gonna do it because I don't want to I want to have some stakes for the bottom, like some sort of relegation, but then you don't get like relegated to anything. You're just done, you know.
Yeah.
And the other rule, but it like since there's no relegation, like if it happens to me, like too bad, dude. I gotta be in the league.
League's over. The league's over. It ends.
But I finished 3rd and 9th the last 2 years, which I'm pretty proud of.
I don't know where I finished the year before.
I don't think you were in it. I think you got kicked out immediately. No,
damn.
I think you got kicked out like immediately. But anyway.
Tough. Anyway, that does it for another episode of Stay Hot. Pray for my fantasy team this year. And as always, comment some flowers and rainbows if you like the episode. Comment some flowers and rainbows if you like the episode. If you hated it, say nothing at all. And until next time, we will catch you on the flippity flop.